Chapter 6 The Enchanted Lake. It was a unicorn, a horse-like creature, except much more elegant and much more appealing to look at, even more than a horse. The unicorn shined the brightest of white, had a 3-foot cone coming out of its head, and because they had been sitting in the dark for a while, Jack struggled to look directly at it. It had a long, light blonde mane of hair, which swirled around every time the unicorn moved its head. No one said anything for several moments. The unicorn was examining the three of them as though it had never seen a human before. Just before Jack had started to think of something to say, the earth began to rumble again. But instead of growing louder and more thunderous, it remained at the calm, distant level it had started at. So focused on the rumbling sound, Emma whispered into Jack's ear, causing him to slight jumply. "Oh, look," she said, pointing on the right side of the unicorn. A large herd of unicorns were galloping through the forest about a mile away. All three of them were now transfixed on the herd rushing through the trees. There was a certain magic about them that made it very hard for Jack to turn away, until Emma tugged on his sleeve and brought him back to his senses. "Hello," he said apprehensively, wondering if the unicorn could understand what he was saying. The unicorn bowed his head but did not speak. "Well, it's not attacking us, so that must be a good sign," said Jack, taking his gaze off the unicorn to see Jacob still clutching his axe. "Put that down," said Emma quietly. "You might be scaring it." "Oh, he doesn't scare me. In fact, even if he tried to attack me with that little thing, you would be very surprised how quickly I could knock it out of his hand." Jack darted around to see who had spoke, but still all he saw were Emma, Jacob, and the unicorn. And then it hit him. Since there was no one new to the group, it must have been the unicorn. Even Jacob's voice wasn't as low as that. "What did you say?" he asked with a note of disbelief in his voice. "I said that there is no way on earth I could be defeated by something as pitiful as that." "What are you talking about?" asked Jacob, still with a slight tight grip on his small pickaxe. "You'd be surprised what I've taken down with this thing." "I am not interested in how many trees you've taken down with it. Who are you? What are you doing here?" the unicorn asked them with a firm tone in his voice. "We're going to Fronston," said Jack quickly, not wanting to make the unicorn any more agitated than it appeared to be. "The fastest way is through the forest, so that's why we—" "What attracts you to Fronston?" the unicorn asked loudly. "That place is in ruins." Jack and Jacob stared at Emma. "Ruins? Why didn't she tell them?" "It's not in ruins," Emma shouted back at the unicorn. "It's just a very poor town." "I wouldn't even call it a town," said the unicorn, staring into Emma's eyes. The conversation was getting very heated very fast. Jack thought if the unicorn didn't like them at first, he surely must have hated them by now. "What's your name?" asked Jack by trying to take control of the conversation. "My name is Beneath You Three," the unicorn said as he started to put out their fire. "Hey, we weren't finished with that." "Well, even if you were not, you are now. I suggest that you move on and stay out of our way." Just as the unicorn started to trot away, another unicorn came galloping up to them. "There you are, Glacius. The rest of the herd already made it back, and you didn't turn up with them. I wondered where you had gone." Just like the first unicorn, this one too shone with a bright white light. But instead of a blonde mane, this one was of dark brown color, almost matching the same shade of bark on the trees. "I would have carried on with the rest of you, Sheenan, but a small bright burning light caught my attention, only to discover that it was 3 humans," spoke the unicorn named Glacius. Even though Sheehan had arrived, it was still very obvious that Glacius did not enjoy the presence of humans. "And were they doing any harm?" asked Sheehan, gazing down at Jack, Emma, and Jacob. "No, we weren't," said Emma firmly. "Well then, Glacius," said Sheehan softly, "I really don't see any more that needs to be done here besides letting them be on their way." Glacius did not look happy about this idea at all, but after a moment's silence, he looked up at the sky and spoke again. "They said this would happen, you know." Yes, I'm well aware of that," said Sheehan quickly. "But honestly, how many times have we listened to Amara and found her to be wrong?" "Not the point. She is the queen, and what she say goes," said Glacius, now leaving everybody behind as he started to trot away. "Ooh," sounding ever very excited all of a sudden. "You have a queen. Can we come and meet her?" I thought you wanted to carry on through the forest as fast as possible, asked Jacob. Obviously, but this could be the only time we're in a forest that has unicorns in it. Did you know that they were in here, Jack? She asked. I didn't even know there were animals in here, to be honest, said Jack, staring at the ground. If you want to come, said Sheehan, we better leave now, otherwise Glacius will tell the Queen what horrible wrongdoers you are, which I'm certain you are not. No, we're really not, said Emma. We were just passing through so we could get to Fronston. Fronston's a bit of a journey, said Sheehan. You guys look like you'll all fit on my back. Jump on, and I'll take you to where our herd resides. And just like that, the unicorn bent down his two front legs so they could all climb on. You go first, Jack. You're the smallest, so if you sit at the back, you won't see anything, said Emma. Jack placed his hands on the back of the unicorn and hoisted himself into a comfortable sitting position, soon followed by Emma behind him and Jacob behind her. Without asking if anyone was ready, Sheehan took off at a bolt and began galloping through the thickened trees. Jack had to admit that this was the greatest feeling he had ever experienced. How fast the unicorn was going exactly, no one knew, but Jack's hair looked and felt as though invisible hands were pulling it straight out of his head. The forest was still dark and the trees were still tall and thick, but Jack couldn't help but dart his head in all directions, just like he did when he and Emma first encountered Jacob's mother's house. He tried to look behind him and catch a glimpse of Jacob, and sure enough, even he had a look of complete joy on his face. After what felt like half an hour of galloping through darkness, Jack's mind and imagination began to run wild. He saw again, in his mind, the heroic warrior with Emma by his side and now riding through the lands on a ferocious steed. At the thought of Emma by his side, Jack's stomach tightened and then became very calm and smooth again. He half expected to feel Emma's arms grip around his waist, but unfortunately he felt nothing of the sort. He shook his head to try to throw the image out of his mind, and as he came back to reality, the trees were starting to become more spread out and it was getting brighter again. Not far now, shouted the unicorn out of nowhere, nearly giving Jack yet another heart attack. Another couple of minutes, and before they knew it, the unicorn was slowing down, bending over, and they were sliding off Sheehan's back. Welcome to the heart of the forest, said Sheehan slowly, leading them into an open area that was full of more and more unicorns. 20, 30, possibly 40. Jack didn't have time to count how many there were in front of them. Jack, Emma, and Jacob were all in complete amazement. Right in front of them lay a large stone stairway that had been cracked in several places due to the unicorn's hooves, down the stone steps, and they were standing on the edge of a rather small lake. Although it wasn't a normal lake, Jack couldn't put his finger on it, but he knew that there was something different about this lake in particular that made it different from any other lake he had ever seen. On the left side of the lake was a waterfall, no higher than 20 feet at the top, and at the top of the waterfall stood a gigantic tree, so tall that Jack couldn't see the top of it. There was no chance of seeing the sky now. It was all covered with more trees and bright green leaves. It was a magnificent sight. After giving them several minutes to take everything in, Sheehan came back to them and spoke in a soft whisper. Follow me, he said quietly. The three of them said nothing, but happily walked on behind the unicorn. Sheehan walked them around the right side of the lake, opposite the enormous tree, and took them up another set of stone steps. The stairs led to another open patch of land in the forest, and there was what Jack immediately took to be a shrine of some sort. Boulders upon boulders, all stacked on top of one another to make what looked like a chair for horses. In amongst the rocks lay a creature more majestic even than the unicorn itself. Your Highness, spoke Sheehan, bowing his head right down to the dirt on the earth, I come with visitors. The creature merely turned her head only slightly to see who had spoke. Visitors, she said in a hushed voice. Why did you bring them to us? Please, Your Majesty, said Sheehan, bowing his head again and not raising it until he had finished speaking. We were on our way back from hunting, and Glacius found these three humans. I came over and met them, and they wanted to see you, my grace. Me? She asked, slightly louder this time, but still in a wispy voice. What could I possibly have that would make them want to come and see me? Your Highness, the unicorn began speaking again, you are the queen, and they have never seen one before. They were passing on their way to Fronston, and I thought a stop couldn't hurt. I see. said the Queen, bringing her head back to show how it was when they arrived. Come forward, humans. Jack, Emma, and Jacob all stepped out from behind Shin and made themselves known. Jack couldn't help but hang his jaw when he got a better look at the creature. It wasn't a unicorn, but it must have been, he thought to himself. It's bright white and has the cone too. But just like the lake, there was something different about this unicorn. It gave off the impression that it was, if possible, somehow more magical than the rest. Probably why she's queen, he thought to himself. The marvelous creature rose up onto its legs and came out from the rocks and greeted the three of them. Hello, she said calmly. My name is Amara, and I formally welcome you to the Enchanted Lake. She walked over where the steps began and started to descend down them. Come, she said. Jack's smile went from ear to ear, and both Emma and Jacob were eager to follow Amara. It was amazing how soothing it was to hear the sound of Amara's hooves clap on the stone as she made her way down towards the lake. Have the unicorns always lived in this forest? Asked Emma, stepping to the front of the group next to Amara. I always have, yes, she spoke in a friendly manner, but over the last few decades we've grown in numbers. What started as 3 rather quickly became 33. Sooner than we knew it, there was 53, and so on. They were off the stone steps now and began circling the lake again. Where did they all come from? Asked Emma, looking around the other unicorns. Well, it all happened rather fast. They must have heard of my powers and a sort of creature I am, and took a liking to me. The unicorns feel safe in my company, because most of them do anyway. They say while I'm around, nothing can hurt them. Amara stopped walking and beckoned the three of them onto some more large rocks for them to sit while she drank out of the lake. When you say most of them, asked Jack once Amara had returned from drinking. Yes, you see, during Silverville, we lost a large number of our herd. Some unicorns, like Glacius over there, don't see me fit to be a queen. He says I'm only queen because of what I am, rather than because of the things I do. Sorry? Spoke Jacob. Are you not a unicorn too? No. I'm a wondercorn. I'm a mix of unicorn and centaur. I could have been born with a top human half and a unicorn body, or with a unicorn top half and centaur legs. But clearly I was blessed with the head of a unicorn. Together, combined, the powers of unicorns and centaurs create the wondercorn. A moment's silence passed before Jack spoke next. And are you what makes the lake enchanted? He asks. Correct, child, said Amara, and Jack saw a twinkle in the wondercorn's eye. One day, many, many years ago, I came through here and took a sip from the lake. The minute my tongue touched the water, it lit up, and to this day I swear it sounded like it was singing. It lit up the lake, the waterfall, and brought the tree back to life. It wasn't that big when I first tasted that water. And does that make the entire forest enchanted too? Asked Jacob rather quickly. Not entirely, no. The wondercorns are powerful creatures, but not that powerful to bewitch a forest of this size. This must have been the magic that Emma was talking about only moments before the unicorn showed up, Jack thought to himself. It made sense and fitted perfectly. He glanced at Jacob and Emma to see if they both had the exact same look of deep thought on their faces. You said you lost heavy numbers during Silverville, asked Jacob. Yes, that's right. Terrible day that was. Amara began to gaze around at her herd. Not even the power and magic of the unicorns could defeat them. It helped momentarily, but did not take us to victory. And it's moments like that that I give unicorns like Galasius his reasons for thinking I'm not fit to be queen. Well, I'd like to see him conjure up a herd of unicorns that'd be willing to go into battle. Unicorns are usually peaceful creatures. I was only able to convince the ones I could because I was a wondercorn. Do you remember who you were battling against? Asked Jacob, looking directly at Amara now. I could never forget that awful face if I tried, she said angrily. What was the name of him? Asked Jacob, getting to his knees. Never you mind what the name is. As long as it is never mentioned again, I will rest easy. Jacob was about to ask again when he caught the sight of Emma shaking her head and mouthing the word no. I'm sorry to hear you suffered heavily, said Emma, patting the wondercorn, but then quickly taking her hand back in case humans weren't allowed to touch her. No, child, it's okay, Amara said softly, and Emma resumed her patting of her back. We all lost someone in that war too, she said quietly. It took both my parents during the raids. Yeah, the battle took my father, said Jacob, getting to his feet and patting Amara also. It took my mum too, said Jack, beginning to stand up. Mother? Amara asked, looking at Jack. Yeah, my dad was sick and my mum went instead, said Jack. Was your mother Kalina Hart? She asked, staring at Jack with wide eyes. They were still twinkling. That's right, he said quietly. Oh, dear boy, I have never seen a woman so brave in all my life. Fought alongside her, I did. A great, great warrior Kalina was. What was your name? Asked Amara with admiration in her voice. My name's Jack, he said. It felt very strange for him to be telling his own name for once, rather than having Emma do it for him. Jack, Amara said firmly, you should be very proud of your mother. She may not have won the fight, but she definitely put the war on hold for us. What do you mean by that? Asked Jack, sounding keen to know the answer. I mean, I've never seen anyone fight the way she did. Why, she managed to fight her way through the enemy's swords, walls, and I think I remember her trying to take on a dragon single-handed. But she realized she couldn't do that on her own and went straight for the one responsible for bringing chaos and destruction to our lands. It was amazing, but also very heartbreaking to watch. She charged with her sword held out in front of her, pierced it through the heart of the enemy, and he fell. But then how did she die? Asked Jacob loudly. Do you know how your mother died, Jack? Asked Amara. Not really, he said, staring at the ground. I only know that it was in battle. Well, Jack, started the Wondercorn, like I said, it was amazing to see her sword drive through the enemy out the other side, but sadly at the same time, his sword went right through her and came out the other side too. They both died at the same time. I spread word as fast as I could throughout the battle that he was dead, and that seemed to make our side fight harder and stronger. We won that night, but there was no victory song or dance or feasts or anything of the sort. Our dead were too high in numbers. Remembering to what his father had always said whenever his mother was brought up in conversation, Jack thought he would try his luck and see what Amara thought. Do you think the war between us and them is still going on? I fear it is, said Amara, looking out to her herd again. Even though it has been so long since Silverville, before too long they will rise again and march on us. Now that he is dead, there will most likely be someone who was a strong believer of his ways and will want to carry them out again. Do you remember what those ways were? Asked Jacob. Just like his face, I could never forget the cruelty endured on all those poor people, said Amara. He would capture people simply and make them slaves and force them to see his ways, and if they refused, he would dispose of them in whatever way he saw fit. He was a savage. Who was he? Asked Jacob again. Again, like I said before, that doesn't matter. All that matters is that he is gone, and we can get ready for the next one to come along. You're positive, aren't you? Said Jacob quietly. Emma smacked him on the arm. Boy, I am realistic, Amara said firmly. There was a pause for a moment before the Highness spoke again. But anyway, I think I've bored you enough with old stories of history. I remember Sheehan saying something about you three travelling to Fronston. Yeah, that's right, said Jack, agreeing with Amara. Well, you better be on your way then, she said back into her royal tonality. If you head through the gap in the trees, keep walking directly straight, you should be about there about 2 days. Good day. Yeah, thanks, said Jacob again in a whisper so Amara did not hear him. Despite how beautiful and peaceful it was by Enchanted Lake, Jack had to admit that they had probably wasted enough time as it is. Jack, Emma and Jacob waved goodbye to Sheehan, and he gave a great neighing sound and rose up on his hind legs. It was like watching it in slow motion as the unicorn fell back to the solid ground with a thud underneath its hooves. The three of them started ascending up yet another stone staircase and through another gap in the trees, and with one last look at the enchanted lake, Jack turned away, realized that Jacob and Emma were leaving him behind, and began running to catch up with them.